Welcome to Thunder Nerds. I'm Brian Hinton.
And I'm Frederick Weiss, and you are consuming the Thunder Nerd. And our guest today is designer, musician, friend that calls you from out of the blue, Travis Neilson. Travis, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm a big fan. So it's good. It's good to be here.
It's mutual. I'm a big fan. I've been consuming your content for many moons, and I've picked up a lot here and there. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. I think this is probably your third time on here, and pick your brain a little bit and really ask you some interesting questions. But before we do that, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, Travis?
Sure. Travis Neilson. I connected with Frederick and that because I am a previous YouTube person, YouTuber, and podcaster and speaker, kind of like doing the rounds in the design world. That was like in the before times, before the pandemic and before a few other things. And so I'm kind of like, currently I employed at Google and YouTube and design for YouTube Music. And I live in Hawaii and I like swimming in the salt water. I don't know what's a good introduction.
No, I think that's pretty good. I want to get back.
I need to
Hawaii.
practice. I need to practice that.
I want to get back
water.
to Hawaii in a little bit, and the salt water, because I'm sure it's different there from everywhere, but especially with the beaches. But why don't you tell us a little bit about YouTube and YouTube Music specifically? What is that about? What is that like? And how did you get into it?
Yeah. So I guess it starts a long time ago. When I was doing a few startups. I was working as a designer at some startups. Hi, Vincent. And
Travis.
Hey, the startup I was at was this like big data analytics tech, place, and their job was to understand the layout of video online, and so they ingested data from all different video sources, and then the biggest, of course, on the market is YouTube. And so I was designing for people who were uploading video and like kind of being YouTubers or being video personalities on other platforms as well, like, but of course, YouTube being the biggest. And so I didn't really know what it was like to be them, didn't have a lot of empathy for what they're going through, but I was designing tools for them. So eventually I went to VidCon just as kind of like, let's check this thing out. And it was just like the energy was like palpable, like you could just like bite the energy in the air. It was so awesome. And right there on the show floor, I sat down with my phone and registered my YouTube name, my YouTube account. And I said, I'm committing to this. I'm going to start uploading videos so I can understand the place better. And that's what became DevTips. And DevTips, over the 3 years that I ran it, became one of the larger and more popular design and development kind of websites. I eventually sold it. And that's not very common to sell a YouTube channel, but I had a pretty good exit on it. And when I did, it was over 300,000 subscribers and like 2 or 3 million views. I forget the numbers now. It was a while ago. So that was like maybe like 5 years ago. And that definitely like raised my profile in the design world. During that time, I was scouted out by Google to join Google and went through that process. Actually, like live blogged the interview process joining Google, and had like not like a secret camera in my interviews or anything like that, but like I would like go into an interview and I would come out and talk about it, and I would share like my projects that I was doing and things like that. Eventually, like I had to take them down, I think. Or I did take them down, not had to, but it was like an interesting thing. And I still would even like, be at Google and people would walk by and they'd be like, oh my gosh, are you Travis? Your videos helped me get this job, And so it was like kind of a good feeling that would come, recursively, like people would, come and give me kudos for things that I had done years ago. And who doesn't love that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So eventually I transitioned over to, I was at Google Search for years, and I designed for crisis events, and that was like such a big emotional thing. It really required a lot, visiting, the aftermaths of Hurricane Harvey and Irma, and like traveling around and interviewing, understanding what people are, what information needs people have, like what are you searching for during like times of crisis, like escape routes or like provisions, or what are the latest updates from the government, like these type of things. And my job was to design a consumable surface where that information would be like available to people in times of need. We also did like, I led information gathering research expeditions to like different regions. That was one of them. Also, after the fires in California, in Paradise, went up there, led a team to do interviews and kind of like research for those needs. And now Google is like one of the bigger, resources, especially during wildfire season, teaming up with local governments to help people kind of be safe in those times. So that was a big thing, but it was like pretty heavy. And eventually I was like, I need something different. So I made my way over to YouTube Music, where now I design surfaces for people trying to kind of like relax from those heavy things and kind of get into music and enjoy themselves in other ways. So I like it. It's great. The team at YouTube Music, shout out YouTube Music. You guys are awesome. Everybody I meet is just incredible. It's like at Google and YouTube is like the highest, density of like incredible talent that like I've ever encountered. It's really great to be there, and I feel lucky every day. Logging in. I used to go to work. Now I log into work.
Yeah, it's a little different, huh?
Yeah, what a world.
Yeah, that must be so rewarding, especially one of your, at least from my understanding, one of your big interests is music. So you, as you're developing these solutions and experiences, you're also looking at it from the perspective of a creator of music.
In some ways, yeah. Like my user on the like music side would be like the bigger ones, like the Billie Eilishes, or like the big little Peeps or something. He's not kicking anymore. I don't know, just like the bigger acts, and like the record label and the labels is who I deal with mostly. But in terms of like advocating for the independent musician and stuff, I think that I do have an advantageous spot that I can make sure to always kind of like advocate for them, design for them as well. The people who are independent, the people who are like those bedroom producers, which I consider myself, and kind of create a space for them as well. Even though my mandate, is to kind of like service like the music industry, which is kind of like the big, record label people.
Yeah, that's what I like about YouTube Music, though, is the independence. It pulls in all the like the covers that are on YouTube, and I love YouTube Music. So thank you for the
Yeah.
work you and your team does.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, who does that, and that kind of area is called Unique, which is kind of fun. It's like a play on words, but you're right. YouTube has all this unique music content. And we do leverage that. We lean into it in a lot of ways to kind of like bubble up that as a kind of a unique value proposition amongst our competitors, right? So it's cool, and like that's one thing I'm proud of too, is like a lot of the big acts that today, and that are again those big like record label type of the Billie Eilishes, the Biebers, the whatevers, the Grandes. A lot of them broke on YouTube, and it's always like nice to like have that space where we can like raise up quality voices in music.
Speaking of which, we have a musician right here who's going to be on YouTube Music, who's going to play us
Hey,
a little later. Vincent, he said that he would play us a ballad and try to get on YouTube Music. So thank you, Vincent. He'll get.
Oh my God.
Before we get to that point, Travis, I wanted to ask you, if
nice.
somebody has aspirations of working at YouTube Music, what exactly would they be thinking about? What should they research? Basically, if you could give us like a little insight of some of the tiny granularities of your day to day.
Are you saying like how to get a job there, or are you saying like what is it like to work there?
Boiled down, how's it like to work there? Yeah.
Hmm. I don't know that it's much different than any other design job. Maybe like the scale of it might be a little different. So everything is like an experiment, like you create a new design and you work it through the approval process, which may or may not be, actually it's kind of interesting because Google/YouTube was like my first big company. I was doing small agencies and startups my whole career before that. So I don't have like I don't know what it's like at like another big firm or big company, but I would imagine it's kind of similar. You have like, this organization structure that you have to understand. And so I would say like that a big part of my day is kind of like understanding who the other people that I'm working with are and making sure that I'm connecting with like the different, if I'm building a thing that shows up on somebody else's surface, like YouTube main or on the living room app or something like that, I have to kind of like work with those people. So a lot of it is like collaboration. A lot of it is just checking in with other folks and kind of like saying like, hey, this is what we're thinking. Does that align with where you're going? And so like like time in Figma versus time checking in with folks is like not like it's like not one-to-one. Like you're doing a lot of more of like relationship building and collaboration and things like that, more than like heads down design. However, there are like really great moments where we all get together and like, I've had the great fortune of being able to organize and run and facilitate sprints at Google and YouTube, and just like really grow in that way, helping people to get on the same page quickly and kind of race towards the same objective, kind of leveraging their knowledge and skill sets to the benefit of the project, yeah. So I would say a lot of it is like being comfortable with reaching out to people you don't know and ask them questions and kind of orient yourself very quickly to the problem and the needs that they have and where you can help. So yeah, it's kind of political in that way, but not in the political, like not in the sense of,
Government.
I guess, politics has like a bad word, right? Like, oh, it's so political. That's a kind of a negative thing. But I would say it's political in that you're like working together, to create something bigger than what you can do on your own, and you have to do it with poise and grace, which is something I'm working on.
Payne had a question.
I'm curious about thinking back, you said you worked at agencies and a lot of small shops for a while. And then suddenly the day that you woke up and you're like, I'm going to work at Google. Everyone not always, but a lot of people aspire to work for Google and Facebook and all those large companies. What was it like to have that like sudden, oh, I'm actually doing this and this is happening tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got on the wrong bus.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. So I was in Silicon Valley, that's where all these companies are. And I went to because like Google has its own bus, and like it was finally stopped taking the train into work, and so I'm like, gonna get on the Google bus, and I'm waiting for it, looking around, trying to understand like how that whole, how that whole process works. And I get on the bus that goes to Apple. And I'm like, wait, what is this?
Oh
and the guy's like, yeah, he's like shaking me down for my Apple ID. And I'm like, I don't have that. And he's like, this is the Apple bus. I'm like, oh my God. But eventually, yeah.
Great.
Eventually I got my way to Google, and because I was so used to startups and stuff, and everything is like so quick in the startup world. When I got to Google, it was tough because they're like, hey, well, before we expect anything big of you, you need to like learn how this place works, because it's actually a lot more complicated than you're used to. Not speaking down at me, but like that's just kind of like how it is. And they're like, well, we estimate you need about 6 months to ramp up. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, I'm ready to do some like hot stuff today. But like it's true. Like I needed that time to kind of like understand. And like again, I'm still like growing and understanding how things work. And again, like the trite phrase is like at scale, but literally, and I think actually it's interesting with the working at home situation during the pandemic has really helped me understand this kind of thing, because the organization is much more transparent when everybody is dialing in and we're all on the same kind of like playing field. You dial in and like, maybe the director is in the same you know, call as you are, but you're all just a little window with, you know, with the same rules of raise your hand to speak kind of things. And instead of like everybody just like in physical space, there's a lot more hierarchy that happens. And so like, I think the virtual working spaces like really flatten out like authorities in a lot of weird ways, like kind of like sometimes uncomfortable ways, but like ultimately I think productive ways. And so like instead of like having to go run to somebody's desk and like ask them a question, your question will be like in a doc where everybody can see it. So it's a lot more democratic or a lot more like accessible and visible to like everybody who needs to know that information. So I think like the working from home situation is kind of like changed the whole struggle that I have really with, because I have, you know, going back, a huge problem with authority, and that's always been like a problem of mine. And looking into like this flattening of kind of like, you know, authoritative presence via virtual world has really helped me to understand how things kind of work, you know, and what I should be doing in order to leverage that. That was like all coded language. Am I being clear enough?
No, I think you are. I'm sure Vincent got some stuff. Give you an opportunity, Vincent, to jump in.
Sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought. You're putting me on the spot. Yeah. Sorry, what were we talking about? I just completely brain farted here.
Okay, man, we'll get back to you.
It's the camera on you suddenly. You're like, I don't know.
I know. Everything is like, oh God, what do I talk about now? Like,
I just figured you needed an opportunity there to jump in. But you know what we could talk about next, since we're talking about music, why don't we talk about little music boxes? I'd love to know the origin story. You know, what was the Phil Collins? What was the genesis that got you there? Like,
Phil Collins.
Why did you think of this? And tell us a little bit about it, and maybe we could actually look at some of these interfaces, etc.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah. So the genesis of it, was I was actually doing dishes one night. I was watching YouTube on my iPad, and like an autoplay next video came up. And I can still remember the video. I go back and I watch it every now and then. I showed it to my son maybe a month ago, and he was like, "This is amazing." And it was like, it was just these two hands playing, and he had four volcas, kind of like these instruments right here. That one actually specifically is my first one. Let me go grab it.
The sample, yeah. Yeah,
wow.
I have some of these too.
You have quite a recording studio there.
Yeah, maybe you could describe this too for our audio listeners.
What is this machine? Oh yeah. Okay. So I'm holding a little, you know, box in my hand, a little music box. And it's about the size of a VHS tape, if you're familiar with that, if I'm not talking to people that are too young to know what that is. But it's like, you can hold it in your hand. You can probably even fit it in your pocket or throw it in a backpack. But it's also, it's a sampler player, and it has a sequencer on it and a few other things like, you know, audio controls that you would find on a music instrument like this. And I use it to generate hip hop beats and other types of music. And it really is like, it's this really cool little machine. I got it for like $150 or whatever. And they're intended to be these entry level single purpose little machines. And I have a few others, like this one's a bass, you know, like it's a bass synthesizer modeled after the famous 303 from Roland. This one is designed. You can even see the design details in it, like the white and the gray and the red and everything. It looks like an MPC, and it really does kind of work like an MPC, which is like the famous, you know, hip hop sampler that everybody from, you know, Kanye to Dr. Dre was using during the 90s and 2000s. Now everything's on the computer and such, but like hardware instruments, like this is so much fun, you know. And then, like, you know, you get this, what's it called? Like gear.
Yes. Yeah.
What is it? Acquisition syndrome?
Yeah.
Gear train, where you just acquire more and more gear over time.
It really is. Yeah. You're like, oh, you know what else would be cool? And then you buy another unit and stuff like that. And so like my gear collection has grown over the years. And I think this is kind of like the worst or most egregious. Yeah. The most egregious expression of gas is probably modular synthesis. Like, so that behind me, this mirrored. Okay. So each one of these like little squares, like that's a square, that's one. they're in this box, that case, and the case is powered, but that's all the case does. And so for each of these, units to speak to each other, you have to patch it with those cables that are hanging out of it. Again, I'm getting my left and right mixed up here. But each of those cables helps the one module speak to another. So an audio coming out would need to go into a filter maybe, or then into like an effects, like a reverb or something. And so there's a different module for each one of those things. And it's really cool because like every time you patch it up, it's basically a new instrument. Like it can do something totally different, and the way that you approach it and play it is completely different. But that adds to like the complexity, is that you never really learn it. You never really like know what's going on because it's always different. But then again, it's like coding or like a math problem that you solve every time you approach it. So it's more of like just like a really interesting hobby. And I've gotten into like building them myself. Like I have a soldering iron and I get the kits and like I build modules myself, and it's fun. And then there's the left. Gosh, this is so confusing. Okay.
404.
Yeah, that's probably you have a 404. All right, awesome.
Yeah, I have the MK2 coming actually this Wednesday. Finally.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's like another level, that one there.
Yeah, the OP1 too. It's nice.
Yeah, geez, again, I raised my right hand.
The other hand.
OP1. This
Let me ask a real quick question about these, and I'm sure this might be something that some people are thinking about. Why? And I expect you to have the perfect answer for this, Travis. So high expectations. Why?
Yeah.
Why would someone want to collect these pieces of hardware rather than doing all this virtually in some kind of software like Logic Pro? Is it more like the kind of idea of like, I like the feel of a book, so I'm going to collect a book rather than put them all on a Kindle? Is that it? Like, what's the thought of this?
Yeah, I think you could say some of that, and like you could romanticize it and be like, oh man, like turning a knob is so much better than clicking a mouse button. I don't know. But like, I think ultimately it's like, yeah, it's like the aesthetic of a musical expression and how you want to approach music, like backing up, like if you're at a concert and you see somebody playing a guitar, you may not even know how to play guitar, but you kind of like see them doing work. You see them creating input and you hear the output and you connect them and you're saying like, okay, something is happening there. And it's similar with this stuff. Like you may not know how the sampler works or how these synthesizers are kind of like connecting or talking. And it's actually really difficult to describe one of these, even though like I make videos that are like, okay, this thing is talking to this thing. And it's kind of fun to nerd out on that gear. But ultimately the idea of like putting like the expression of work, the aesthetic of turning a knob and hearing a filter sweep, or hitting a button and hearing like an effect or a new voice, a new kind of like signal sound come through, is really, really gratifying in a lot of ways. Now, I think that you can make better music, more specific music, and like actually create songs, we call them, easier with software. Like software is so advanced these days, and there was a time where hardware was better, like sounded better, but like they have these like modeled instruments now, and they're so complex and so detailed that like anything that you do on a laptop will most likely sound better than anything that I can give you. But the expression, like the way you approach the machine in order to get the sound, is in itself a little bit of the art form. And it's completely gratifying when you can create a drop, like the music cuts out, there's like only this happening, and then boom, everything comes back all at once. Extremely gratifying when you can do that on a physical machine, although it's like 10 times harder because you can't just program each idea and then press play and listen to it again. And then,
could you say it's like akin to playing like any kind of instrument, but a digital instrument, like the way, for example, Vincent's going to pick up his guitar and play for us later on. But like, is it just like if Vincent picks up his guitar, is it the same thing for you? Like if you say you perform, you would, it's not about making the music per se, but which it is, but it's also about having that play and being able to make it, and like you're actually painting with a paintbrush and you're getting a different way to express yourself and create art, and also to play the instrument. Is that
Yeah.
fair?
I'd say it's very similar, you know, like kind of like if you practice and practice and get that one song on guitar, it feels so gratifying that you did it, you accomplished it, you put in the work. It's similar with any of these, right? Like it takes time and effort to make anything sound good and kind of sound like a coherent piece of, an idea of music. And like actually performing and executing in in a really, in like an effective manner is hard to do. And you have that accomplishment feeling as well. Like sometimes I'll go back and look at my old videos and be like, oh wow, he did that. Like it's kind of like I can learn, because each of the things that I do, like each of the videos that I make, I have to take time and program the instrument for that song. And it's not like I can sit down and play a song for you right now, because I haven't like practiced a song and thought it out and programmed all the details into each pad or each button or knob. And so even so like each time I make a recording, it's like a one-time thing. I could never play it again in a live set, unless I could somehow go recreate all those the situations that the song was. Whereas a guitar, you can like pick up kind of any guitar and play Freebird, so I think there's a little bit of a different kind of like like an ephemeralness to this kind of stuff that I'm doing. And maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just the way I approach it. But I don't know. Like I think that like it kind of is like a little game each time. And when you master the game, I erase everything that's on the sampler and I move on,
You were
It's
going
kinda
to show
weird.
us a video of some of the stuff, right? Like,
Yeah. Do you want to see what it's like? So I put a comment in one of the docs. Do you have that video? Do you want to play it?
oh yeah, let me see if I could play it. And while I'm looking this up, I know Vincent has a question for you.
Okay. What's up, Vincent?
Sorry. I was just watching your little music boxes on YouTube. So I've
Yeah.
actually been meaning to produce music as well, just as like a side hobby, as a side gig. And I've been looking into get into like a mini keyboard, like a 12 keyboard, where I can just like, go on like Ableton or any other music production DAW. And that way you just, like you said, you just have a better mapping and better feel for like, okay, this is where your kick is coming in. Here's where your I don't know what the other terms are, but like there's different types of beats to kind of produce like a chill hop song or to kind of produce like a dubstep song, depending on like what you're going for.
Totally.
But I was kind of curious, like you said with like the synthesizer, you can like create different sounds, right? That are kind of unique, and you experiment with I don't know, different settings, because I don't know enough about synthesizers or at least like producing sounds digitally through a device. How does that compare to like a DAW, where you can do it on like a software versus just like a hardware device?
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at this comment here in the chat. Okay, so in a DAW, like a digital audio workstation is kind of like everything you need. It'll map out the timing and the tempo, and like it's kind of like a timeline of the music experience. Whereas like a hardware, you're playing it in real time. Maybe you can have like a sequencer or a looper that will help you like sustain your performance over time and like add in new elements. But all of the features that you can find in hardware, like in terms of sound design, like shaping the sound, what does it sound like, you can most likely find in the DAW, and probably easier, in the DAW. One that people like, if I was going to look at all of the stuff that I do is DAW-less, so it's like all hardware. I record straight into a little device that records. I don't record into the computer at all. But if I was going to, I would probably look into Ableton Live. That one seems to be, very, very performative, and like it's kind of like the modern, preferred workflow, Ableton Live.
Do you record like your own sound bites? Have you ever been to like a or ever heard of like a folio studio, where like they produce sound for like special effects for movies? Like for instance, like if they want to simulate like a bone cracking, for instance, they'll take a piece of celery and just go like right? And
Yeah.
supposedly that sounds just like the special effects that you hear in movies.
Yeah.
You do something like that as well? Do you take the creativity where you try to create new sounds, or at least like experiment with sounds via recording on a on like an XHR mic, and then use that and run it through whatever?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, one of the fun things is sound design, right? So that the world is full of sound, and you can take your microphone around and collect all sort of things. I think in the video that I posted in the chat here that we might watch, it starts off with me with creating a sound on guitar and then recording into the 404 through a guitar pedal, and then using that as a texture. Yeah, here we are. So this pedal right here. See how just putting it right onto the pad, and then I'm remixing that song or that tone of the guitar into a beat through the sampler, and then adding the fingers along the bottom are creating the drum beats.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Keep your mind on your mask, kid. Horror form a classic, it's drastic. Filling the hydrochloric acid, splashed it. Pulling out, reached and blasted. Pow.
Shout out to MF Doom. This is the late great MF Doom. That's his voice on it.
So what's the process of going and creating something such as this? Like where do you start off with your inspiration?
Where do I start off? It depends on, like what we're doing at that time. Like, for example, this one, I was messing around with that guitar pedal, and I had made this other video just plucking around and changing the pedal. The pedal was this little granular sampler kind of thing called Mood. And I was messing around with it, and it was creating these amazing tones. And so I decided to load them in as different pads at different spaces. Like I would put a tone here, and then move down the timeline and put that on this pad. And there's one of them where I reversed it, and so it has more of like a rushing sound, like a whoosh kind of sound to like, and then. And then I mess with those. I kind of like learn how to, if I can make like a little rhythm or a little melody using these tones in sequence, and learn like what are good sequences. Like first this pad for one beat, and then this pad for 2 beats, and then this one will kind of like finish the phrase, and then put a drum pattern under it. I kind of like to have single drum hits that I can play, and then also have a drum loop that's automatic that I can throw to if I get like my head gets a little too like overwhelmed. I'm like, oh, throw it to the loop that'll keep us going, and then I can focus on the melody, and then like cut everything else out, and then bring in like my drum fingering. Because again, like going back to that guitar metaphor, like when you see somebody strumming a guitar, they're doing work. And so I think it's like more performative to like be tapping out a beat in front of people or in front of the camera. But at the same time, like maybe that's taking up too many cycles in your mind, and it's not going to free you up to do another interesting thing. And so a lot of the time it's like juggling concepts in real time. Like, do I have the amount of fingers I need to like add an effect or a filter sweep or like a stutter, as well as like sustain the melody and the drum beat? If not, then can I pre-record? And the 404 has this really great feature called resampling, where I can kind of like record to a pad, and then do a performance that records to a pad, and then later on I can play that pad, and then my performance is like going. And so I use that quite a lot. Resampling is fun. And then you can like do effects to the resample as well. So like a delay, like you can hit, like if you want to do a drum roll, on all you have is a sample of like a snare, but you can like put a delay on it, and then like send that to another pad. So you have 2 pads. One is a single hit and one is a delayed, So there's a lot of kind of like nerdy, fun kind of things that you do. And a lot of it is just time exploring and time on the machine,
Makes me think of Reggie Watts. That's probably an easy example for people to get.
Reggie Watts is such a cool guy. He a lot of what he does is like vocal sampling and looping. and then he'll add effects onto that. But he's so fun. I saw him live in San Francisco at the Exploratorium. It was called Afterglow. It's so cool.
So awesome, yeah, he's amazing. I know Vincent has another thing for you.
Oh, I have a quick question. Do you apply music theory into like the songs that you make, like the chill hop songs or the lo-fi hip hop songs? Because I know that's kind of like an important base to figure out like what the rhythm is, what the track is going to sound like.
Yeah, I mean, music theory, that's a big term and it kind of covers a lot. But like essentially, like if you understand the basics of like how to keep a song in key, that's going to help you out quite a lot. So the first thing to know is like, are your samples in key and what key are they in? Because I'm probably going to add another layer onto it, and so I want to make sure that if I'm playing along on a synth or something, that I'm playing in the right key. So something like that is kind of basics, and it's not like you have to have like a doctorate or go to Yale and learn music theory. It's just like, oh, I think this sample is in F sharp minor, but I don't really know that key. And like, so like, okay, I'll just Google what are the notes in F sharp minor, and then I'll just make sure I only play those ones. It's kind of like that simple. And then the other parts of music theory are just like, building a song, building layers, understanding like the sound spectrum. Are these like, high tones, mids, lows, and how do I clear up space for those things to breathe, and and you get better as you go. And like sometimes like even like not even paying attention to that makes a great, moment. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. I was just really curious on the topic, so I looked it up like a month ago, where it was like a crash course on music theory. I don't remember which YouTube creator was that, but it kind of goes through like, hey, here's the mappings on a piano, and then you can have your songs in like the C key or songs in like the G key, and you can also like swap it. Like you can also shift songs from one key to another. When I started learning how to play the guitar, like my vocal range isn't really that high, so like a lot of times I'll just default to the G chord for a lot of like, or the G key for a lot of the different chords, instead of like if a song is like already in C, I have to go to G instead because it doesn't match my voice because I have a deeper voice. Right. I don't know if you like when you think about a song, do you think about what key you're going to start in, or is it just more of like, I'm just going to stick with this like one specific note or specific beat or specific instrument and then see where it goes? Is that?
Yeah. Sometimes I'll start with like, am I finding a good sample that I like, and then finding out what key that's already in, and then base that on, base everything else around that. But sometimes I'll be like, I know that I don't want to do the key of C because it just sounds kind of like, common. Because C is like, like it's the simple one. It's basically on a keyboard, it's all the white keys, like I want to add some black keys in there. And so if I am deciding key first, what I want to do, I'll go into something a little bit more funky, like key of B sharp or something like that, to keep me on my toes. But honestly, like if you know the key that you're in, just taking some time to think about what are the things that can build around that, it becomes pretty evident to what you should do next once you kind of already know what key you're in. And so whether that's deciding the key up hand or up front, or like finding a good sample and being like, oh, cool, it's in G or whatever. That's how I kind of do it.
I'd add too, since it's all, most of the stuff is digital, or at least like hardware digital. So you can be in the wrong key and easily adjust it later. I'd say just dive in and explore, Vincent.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
I've been meaning to buy a keyboard, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy it used because I know a lot of people have a bunch of keyboards lying around.
Yeah.
And I never got around to buying it from the person I was trying to buy it from.
Get an old Porter Sound. I have a 480 that I love. I highly recommend getting some of the old Yamahas. They're great.
I was looking into the AKG minis. The AKG mini, like the for a keyboard.
Got it. Yeah.
I would say that learning. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Were you going?
Your audio's all messed up a little bit, Frederick.
I was just going to say that, learning how to play the piano or the keyboard really like leveled up my understanding of music theory quite a bit really fast. So I think if anybody wants to like learn music, I would say learn on a keyboard.
Yeah, that makes sense because the keyboard is like the closest mapping to music theory.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever think about like major and minor chords? Like minor chords tend to sound like depressive, and like major chords tend to sound like more upbeat. And do you like think about that in the song creation where it's like, okay, I want this part to be like higher beat, and then like this part to be lower beat? I mean, like some songs like it's usually a lot of songs like work off a 32 count, where it's like 32 counts is like this set of beats, and then the next 32 counts is like this, and then it kind of like fluctuates back and forth. I also dance as well, so it's like I just notice a lot of these like little nuances with music.
Yeah,
because
totally.
I'm always like trying to follow the beat, and it's like, oh, okay, this is like when the octave, or this is when the eight count is done, and this is when the new set of whatever starts. Do you think about that when you're creating music? Like there's different segments of your music soundtrack where it's like distinctly different parts of the song that kind of tell a story, or
Totally. Absolutely. Music has parts. You have the chorus and verse and bridge and all that. But then like the 16 bars is famous in hip hop, like if you're going to do a verse, 16 bars is like the kind of like the standard. And then 2 of those is 32, so like everything breaks down to an 8, or 4 beats to it, or 4 notes to a beat, it's all math. Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. Counting everything out. That's how you know where you're at.
And drop in that swing and those drunken beats. So we're getting close to the end here, so we're going to switch over to lightning. Okay, Frederick scared me a little there. And I have some new 2022 questions too. And the first one, so what it is, Trav, is that we'll each ask you a question in sequence, and you answer it, and we move on to the next one. My first one's going to be a little ridiculous, but
okay.
So you're expecting a really important phone call from a friend or family member. For some reason, you're eating like maybe Cheetos or wings, and your hands are like covered with it, and your phone rings. Do you just answer it and not care, or do you wipe your hands first?
Oh, I answer it with yucky hands, but I like try to do like my finger swipe on the keyboard and like hold it like with my palms like this kind of. I'm that guy. Right on. That's a great question,
Frederick.
Cutting really to the heart of the matter. I like that question. Sorry, Frederick.
All right. Who's your musical hero?
Gee whiz. I guess my musical hero would be this guy named Rocky Vadalato. He's a folk musician. I feel like he's been playing the soundtrack of my life my entire life. I've seen him in concert like maybe 6 times, and he I kind of know him now. Like every time I see him, he's like, oh hey, I remember you. In fact, I built his website as one of my very first websites back when I was a teenager for his other like rock band called Waxwing. I built their website when I was a teen, and yeah, it's amazing. The last show that I went to was called a living room show. So it was just me and like 30 other people in somebody's living room in California, and then him just standing in front of us playing his guitar. It was like incredibly intimate, incredibly beautiful. The way he I feel like he's like the narrator of my life, and a lot of his music comes through. It just like breaks me in half every time I hear him sing. Yeah.
Vince, you got a lightning round question?
Oh, I have a question as well. If you had to pick one superpower, would it be teleportation or flying?
Gee whiz. How fast can I fly? I think maybe flying. Because I would say like the utility of teleportation is kind of high, but the experience, right? Like the experience of flying would be better. So I would love to soar above the clouds and just kind of like hang out with some burbs. It'd be great.
Yeah, it's all about the experience and the journey, at least in my mind, instead of the destination.
Yeah.
So what's something that you collect that would surprise people in your inner circle that maybe don't know?
Collect. Yeah, I think I kind of talk a lot about the music, so I do collect a lot of these things, I suppose. I I think that would probably be my answer, but a lot of people know that. Shoot.
Maybe
I think-
t-shirts.
Are you looking around trying to find something?
Yeah, I'm like, I'm very on
Souvenirs.
display. Yeah.
That'll
I collect
work.
I collect good vibes. How about that?
All right.
That works. That's an acceptable answer.
He collects soundtracks and music ideas.
Travis, what is your favorite thing about yourself? Sincerely.
My favorite thing about it, I think I'm a good hang. Probably, that's like I like to get there with people, like I mentioned, like you like in my intro, I said like I'm the friend that calls you out of the blue, and I think that's something that I've been doing the past few years, just like going into my phone book and being like, I have a few minutes, like who can I give that to, and reconnecting with people that I've enjoyed from my past. So I think that like I like that about myself, that I can get on people's level and share moments with them, and I enjoy it. I enjoy people.
Your turn, Vincent.
Oh! I didn't realize like if the camera's on me, it's like I have to say something. No, that's awesome. Like I noticed like I just like some context. Like I used to like remember watching your videos back in the day with like, how do I do CSS floats? Like
Yeah.
you have to put it in a stacking order. You have to do it like this, and that's when like it sort of all cemented in my mind when I watched that video. And I still refer back to that video every time I get stuck on floats, which I never do anymore. But it's kind of interesting to like when I was like going through like the documents of kind of like our show notes beforehand, kind of like their perspectives on life, and now that you've matured in your career and you're kind of like at where you are in life, at least my understanding of it, like at least like what your thought processes are and like what your aspirations are and like what your kind of goals are in terms of what things you like to do, et cetera. And I feel like I align with a lot of those things as well now that like my career is also kind of more stabilized, and like I also reach out to friends that I haven't talked to in a long time. What I do a lot of times is actually try out new hobbies. So my friends, it's funny. I was actually at a party yesterday, and my friend called me the protagonist of Tampa because I live in Tampa, Florida, but I also run like a Tampa like software group that I created myself, and it grew to like a bunch of like 350 active people over a few months. But
congratulations, that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's like I feel like there's always like some creative pursuit to take on, or some creative like hobby to take on. And I just actually came from aerial. I just came from an aerial gym right before this. Like I was doing silks, like climbing on like those. Yeah. So I just find it interesting to see like where your passions are. Like now that you're kind of like set where you are in life, right? And it's kind of interesting to see like what other people are doing kind of with their career. I just find it interesting.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
Sorry, I just want to throw that out there.
I'm curious, what was the last movie that you watched or show for that matter, that truly made you laugh? Like it hurt. Like you were crying laughing.
Yeah. The one that made me laugh is this new show on Netflix called Murderville, and it's Will Arnett, the guy with the voice, and it's all improv, and he's a cop and he's trying to solve murders, and each episode he has a new guest. And
Wait,
I was
just actually
just
improv for real, like it's an improv show.
Yes. Yeah. They're just reacting to the situations that the show producer has set up or whatever. And then at the end, the guest has to like, solve the mystery, but like Will and like, I guess there's like a vague outline, like improv, but they kind of, all the lines are ad hoc. It's quite good. And but there's one episode that just made me dying laughing. And then the line that made me laugh was so hard. He was like, we're all alive. No, something about death. And he's like, yeah, that's the last part. And it just like, it was such a good line. I'm not doing it justice, but the episode is with Kumail Nanjiani. They have a really great rapport, and I'd recommend that episode if you don't want to watch the whole series. But yeah, probably that Murderville.
Check it out.
Oh, Kumail's
And it's
oh, sorry. Good.
it's an easy watch. You know, you don't like I picked it because so that I could like cook and like not even watch it or just listen and kind of, you know, like one of those distractible shows. And it's like that. It's consumable and easy to watch. But it made me laugh so many times. I think that's going to be my pick.
Love it. Travis, if you couldn't be around technology for the rest of your life, starting now, what would you do that would bring you the most joy, that would bring you the most feeling of reward professionally?
I would try hard labor for a while. I would
Specifically, what when you say hard labor, what kind of job?
Yeah, like probably like do some like landscaping or digging ditches kind of for a while, and then maybe try to open a shop, like maybe like a surfboard rental store or something like that. Just like something a little bit more chill and communicative. Maybe a restaurant. I've enjoyed during the pandemic really leaning into cooking, and I think that it's kind of funny, like sometimes I give my kids these meals that are like just gorgeously laid out on plates, you know, and they're just like, oh yeah, it's just Thursday, and I'm like, you guys don't know what it's like you have like, this is restaurant quality food and you're just eating it on a Thursday afternoon. So like maybe eventually, like after like the transition period of no technology, getting my hands, you know, welty and stuff like that, I'd probably go into like some kind of like food-based commerce. Maybe like I enjoy cooking vegetarian meals.
Love it.
Yeah, I don't like touching meat.
I actually used to work in the restaurant industry and used to
Cool.
design restaurants for a living, in case you ever want to
Hey.
input our advice. But yeah,
Thanks,
I love cooking as well. Just like experimenting with new recipes. I don't ever follow like a recipe verbatim. Like I always like modify and like, oh look, I want to add like peppercorns in this mix to kind of like give it a different flavor profile. Like I was making egg frittata for the first time like a few weeks back, and it's like never done it before. I made salmon for the first time last week. It's just,
how did the frittata turn out?
It turned out pretty good. Like I just like I took some Chinese sausage that I cut up and I put some onions, stir fried it, and after that I took 12 eggs, 3/4 cup of ricotta cheese, 3/4 cup of Parmesan cheese, and threw it in a mixed in basket and whisked it, and then kind of like threw it on top of the skillet. Let it sit there for a minute, and then threw it in the oven at 450 for 20 minutes. And it came out really, really good. It's just like the right amount of salt content, and just add some pepper in there as well. And it I don't know, it's so much better than scrambled eggs, honestly.
Yeah.
The texture is just so much nicer. So
yeah, totally.
Well, we're right about at the end here, unless Brian.
Can I do one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
That's
one more. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to. That's actually perfect. Is what we're talking about. What's a weird food combination that at least what most people would consider weird that is uniquely and personally you?
I've learned this from my wife. It's kind of like a fun thing that we do, but we just like, I try to make an interesting meal based on like whatever we like, weird things are left over in the you know, refrigerator at the end of the week, like before we go shopping, you know, like the last ditch effort to make a meal. And sometimes you come out with some really, really interesting things, you know. Yet the other day I just had some peppers and mushrooms, and then like this old rice that was in the refrigerator, you know, so I put that in the frying pan as well. So it was like twice, like basically fried rice, and then put that in kind of like, you know, heated some tortillas, put that in there, and it was like this warm, delicious taco. You know, lots of hot sauce. I love hot sauce. And yeah, I wouldn't say like this is the recipe that uniquely
yeah,
you know, describes me. I would say like if you were coming to visit me, I'd probably make you like a beet poke or something like that. But
like
this meal was so good. It was like warm and just what I needed on that day.
Okay, I'll be over next weekend.
Yeah, I love beets. I love beets. Put them in a sandwich. So good.
Hawaii, so
yeah.
Well, hey, we're right at the end. I got two questions left for you, Travis. One being, how can people find out more about you? What's the website, Twitter, wherever, Little Music Boxes? Where do you want people to go?
Yeah, I think youtube.com/little music boxes is kind of like where I'm most active. I have like the other things. I have the Twitter and the Instagram, but like I don't have any posts up. I kind of like, disappeared from the internet intentionally for a while, and have not really had much of an incentive to come back. So I think like just making music and sharing that, and then showing up on these random like like invitations to podcasts and stuff is kind of like how you'd say hello to me. Yeah, and if you want to email me, it's my name at Gmail.
All right, great. We'll put links to all that in the show notes. And the last part of our show here, some words of wisdom. So the stage is yours, Travis. Can you leave us with some parting words of wisdom?
Parting words of wisdom. Geez.
No pressure.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure actually.
Making sure
I
it's
think,
really meaningful and deep. Okay.
sure.
Don't mess this up, buddy.
I would think that like what I would try to share with you or share with somebody important to me, I share this with my kids, is that like learning who you are is like an important aspect of enjoying yourself and enjoying your life. There's so many other kind of influences that want to tell us who to be or what to do. And kind of learning to cancel out that noise and experimenting with things. Vincent, you're a great example of trying new things a lot. That's the way you find out what you want to be. And you craft meaning, the meaning of your life, through your actions and through your behaviors and the interest that you yourself create. Nobody can give you meaning of life. And so yeah, it's like my word of wisdom is like the meaning of life is something that you make, not something that you're given or find.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Well, Travis, man, thank you so much for being on the show, sharing your time with us. This has been great. Really appreciate it. Anybody else?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, I echo Frederick's sentiments. Time is our most valuable thing, and you shared it with us. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, so, this was just a great talk. Like, it was very interesting to see. Like, I don't know how to describe it in words. It was a great.
Cool. I'm glad
Yeah.
it went well. Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody for watching. Appreciate it. And make sure you subscribe to the show. Thunder Nerds, /subscribe. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks everybody. Take care.
See ya.